Ow. In this episode of Aston1936.com, I'm going to show you how to change the trunk or boot gas struts that hold the trunk lid open for you. Like most modern cars, there's a pair of them that holds the lid up for you. But also, like most modern cars, these things have internal seals that wear out. And what eventually starts to happen progressively, kind of slowly over a few years, is that the strength of them weakens, and soon they aren't able to hold the trunk up or keep it open, and it'll come down and slam on you. So, you know, in my car, right now, it's almost getting kind of lethal. Like, I noticed that it just hammers closed. And I also noticed that my trunk almost binds a little bit as I open up. So these are definitely gotten weak. But the good news is this is probably one of the simplest jobs there is on an Aston Martin that you can tackle yourself. You need hardly any tools, and it only takes a few minutes. So let me show you how. Parts-wise, we only really need 2 of the brand new gas struts. These basically say Liftomat, so they're certainly going to be made for Aston Martin by another company. That actually, there's a website on here that says www.stabilus.com, stabilus.com. But it's got a nice Aston Martin logo. Good news is these aren't very expensive. Aston Martin isn't really marking them up and sticking it to us. So go ahead and contact your dealer or go online and order a pair of original gas struts. If you check out my article, written article, I'll have links to where you can buy them right there. So once we have our 2 struts, let me go over which tools we're going to need. Tools-wise, we don't need hardly anything. This is a really easy project, but you will need a small-tipped flat blade screwdriver, and the handle length isn't all that important, but I've got a fairly long one here. We do need a couple of supplies. We're going to, some masking tape would be a good idea because we're going to mask off some areas we don't want to accidentally scratch. I have a tube of white lithium grease. It's just general purpose grease that you use for lubricating hinges and things, but we are going to put a little dab of grease in the balls when we're doing it. And we're going to want to have at least a shop rag or a microfiber towel we can use to wipe off the old parts when we're working on them. So one of the tricks to putting these struts on and off is learning how to release the catch. Basically, there's a bit of a spring clamp that clamps around the ball in the socket once it's installed, and you can just sort of see the ends of the clamp here. Well, the way it works is it's just a spring piece of steel that's basically going down through little grooves in the side, and you need to pull it up evenly. You don't want to pull it up all on one side or the other. And when you do that, you can see that they pull back, and now you can just easily put the ball in or out. No trouble at all. It just goes straight in or straight out. And when I release them, you can see they pop back out and then they grip around the ball. Just a word of warning though, that you want to not pry this up where it comes off entirely. You can see I'm just pulling it off way too much on this side, and it's not really coming out of this other side. If you spring one of these things off, they are a bear to get back on. There's little slots you can slip them in, but because it'll spring closed, you definitely want to avoid popping the whole thing off if you can. One other tip is that we want to make sure there's some grease in the socket, because this does, wiggle around on the ball every time you open and close the trunk. So these came pre-lubricated from Aston Martin. There's some black grease in there now. But this is what the white lithium grease is for, is that you can basically put just a little, a little dab, about that much, just a little dab in the bottom of the hole, so that it's ready to go back on the car. All right, well, let's get started swapping them out. So just a couple of tips as we get going though. We have to be careful when you take one off. It was already weak and wanting to fall. When you take one off in the middle of the process, it's gonna fall. So you may need a helper to come and hold it up for you. I can kind of just lean on my shoulder. So that's the process I'm going to use for the video. You could put a prop rod in here if you had one that was just the right length, but you definitely want it all the way open. You also don't want it to over open. And if you come in here, Mr. Cameraman, basically once this strut is off, if you had them off on both sides, the hood can over open. And what happens is this metal of the hood hits goes straight onto the glass for the rear window and will crack it. So you need to be careful not to allow it to over open. If you keep the opposite trunk strut connected at the same time, you should be good. All right, so first step is to protect your paint a little bit. I'm just going to pull off about a 6-inch piece here. And what I want to do is, since I'm going to be putting a screwdriver poking it downward in here, I want to make sure that if it goes too far or slips, it'll run into the tape and not my paint. So I've just got a little bit of tape down there for insurance. But this is the harder joint to get open, so I'm going to start with the easier joint. And just going to come in underneath here. I got my shoulder to take the weight on the door. I have my new strut close enough that I can grip it. And there we go, it pops off the ball. And then I'm just going to come in here, pry this off a little bit. So now I got the blade in there, and it should just pop easily off. So that's all there is to getting the old one out. Now I've got my shoulder holding the door up here. I'm reaching back, and I've got my new strut that's pre-greased. And now's a good time to clean up the ball so you get any of the crud or crust off. All right, and if you want, you can just take a little bit more of a dab of grease and just some extra insurance. Get the ball. So now putting them on is generally a little easier. You could do the trick where I was talking about, where you can run the screwdriver in and have the clip up in advance, or you can just put your screwdriver in a little bit to be holding it right now. That's all it takes to slip it back on, but the clip hasn't completely engaged yet. And I just, basically you saw me just put my finger down there, I pushed it on. And then the upper, I found you can just basically, I'm holding the hood all the way up with my shoulder, and you can just push it on. You don't even have to pre-spring the clip. So that's one side done. Now let's go to, let's remove the tape to finish up. You'll notice there's a hole in my tape. It did its job, to a degree. No scratches at least, but yeah, you definitely want to put you could put a microfiber towel down there instead of tape if you didn't have any tape handy. So let's do the other side. All right, that wasn't very hard. So both struts are switched out now, so let's see what the results are. So with trepidation, I just going, oh yeah, that's taking a lot more of the weight. Now it doesn't just hover. Now if you've changed your struts and you can just let go of with your fingers and the trunk lid will just sit here, please leave a comment down below, because I always wonder if the struts get weak over time sitting on the dealer shelves. But basically it's a much slower drop rate, and it actually even opened a little bit extra at the end there. So here's what it looks like now when I let it go. Still has a fair thunk to it, but it's nowhere like the plunge that it used to be. Now that I have the new ones and the old ones, check out this video where I actually took these and I put them on a scale to see what the difference in strength was between the old and the new. Okay, so this is the old right-hand trunk. So these are the new trunk struts. The old ones were 42, so let's see, 67. All right, well you can see that the new ones are about 50% stronger than the old ones. So that's almost 40, 45 pounds of additional strength holding the trunk lid up. Totally worth this. 10-minute job, easily you can do it in your garage yourself. So if there's more struts like this on your car. You've got struts on your doors, so if your doors are slamming and won't stay open, you might need to do the same thing. And also the hood has gas struts. So up here you'll probably see a link to one of those videos on how to change those struts. Down here you're going to see a companion blog article that'll have links to the parts and another write-up of the procedure. Please subscribe if you haven't already, because you'll get notices of all my new articles. And then leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.